Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of Hoops, Helmets, and Heels. This is Rachel the Dime Diva. Are you ready to talk some sports? So, I'm a little bit dressed up today. I am going to a Joe, Music Soul Child, and Eric Benet concert with three of my friends. We all met at our prior job, and we still have remained our friendship to this day. So I'm excited to go tonight. I'm dressed and ready, and I figured I would bring my concert going outfit to you guys for episode number 2. Now, this is a special episode to kick off spring. Spring equinox just happened, so happy spring, everyone. And we also are going to talk today about March Madness. So, buckle in. We're going on a fun ride today. So, in the first episode, we talked about my lore and we did story time on my background as a sports fan. We talked about the NFL, NBA, college football, baseball, NHL, but we didn't really touch on college basketball because I wanted to share with you guys a special set of story times as it pertains to college basketball, which has a special place in my heart. Now, let's talk a little bit about March Madness first for the newbies who may not know a lot about what March Madness actually is. So, March Madness is a set of games that take place in March. It's the NCAA men's basketball tournament. So, what happens is 68 teams are selected, and these are the top 68 teams in the nation according to the selection committee. So this committee selects these teams and it's announced on Selection Sunday. So that's kind of like a kickoff to March Madness. When those teams are selected and they all get started playing, there's about 2 weeks where basketball is on consistently. College basketball is on consistently. And it runs from mid-March to early April. This year, the Final Four is in San Antonio, Texas, and that's one of my favorite U.S. cities. It's an amazing city, and it's the home of the Spurs, which drafted Tony Parker, who I spoke about in my first episode, giving a background into why I fell in love with NBA basketball. I will later in this episode explain a couple of the terms of art that are used during March Madness so that you all can understand what's going on. If you decide to watch some games and you hear some jargon and stuff like that, we will get you up to speed and make you sound adept at March Madness for office pools and all that kind of stuff. So how did I get into college basketball? One word: Duke. Duke University. It is a college in Durham, North Carolina, and they have been a basketball powerhouse for decades. In 2001, the same year that I fell in love with the basketball player, NBA player Tony Parker, Duke won the national championship. They won March Madness tournament. Duke was coached by the famous Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, and that 2001 team had a variety of different future NBA pros, namely Shane Battier, Carlos Boozer, and Jay Williams. And watching them win the NCAA tournament is when I decided, as a 12-year-old, I want to go to Duke University for college. Now, a couple years later, 2003, 2004 year, so this was March of 2004, Duke also had another deep tournament run. Future pro NBA players Luol Deng, JJ Redick, who's now coach of the Lakers, and Sheldon Williams ended up losing in the Final Four to UConn, but they put up a valiant effort throughout the tournament. So that summer, I ended up applying to a summer program, and I was able to spend about 6 weeks at Duke University. I lived in Durham, North Carolina. I lived in the dorms at Duke with other high school students doing an immersion program. It was a summer institute for high school students. And I got to experience Duke, and I thought, you know what? I'm definitely going to go there. I love it. It was really different. I mean, comparing North Carolina to LA, much more greenery, much more humidity. People in the South are much more talkative and friendly. It was a good vibe. And so it only solidified my desire to go. A big treat from that trip was that I got to meet Coach K in person and take a photo with him on the court at the stadium. I know they call the people Cameron Crazies, the people that go to Duke basketball games. So I think Cameron Indoor Stadium is the name of that stadium. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it's called. So we took a picture there, the whole group of high schoolers with Coach K. He was exceptionally tall. That was the thing that really shocked me about him. I think because he's always around other tall people, other basketball players, I never really thought. He was probably 6'4". He was a tall guy, and he was very friendly, very accommodating to us. And he's since retired after multiple decades of success at Duke. So my whole 11th grade year, into my senior year, 2005 to 2006, I thought I'm going to Duke. And I ended up applying and getting in early, which was it was a huge moment for me, one of the amazing memories and experiences from high school. So my parents actually blessed me with a plane ticket last minute to go to this acceptance students weekend at Duke. And we had about a week's notice. So the plane ticket at the time was about $600, which I don't know how much that is in today's, economy, but it was expensive at the time. So thanks, Mom and Dad, for looking out for your girl, because that trip ended up being life-changing. I saw a different side of college when I went on that trip, okay? We, the group of us students, again, stayed in the dorms at Duke, but this time it wasn't over the summer. So when I went for the summer program, it was only us high school students in the dorms. We had chaperones, we had curfews. It was strict. It was like being at summer camp. This time I stayed with a Duke student in the dorms, and I was shook, okay? They had co-ed dorms. There was shared bathrooms. There was people partying in the hallways. It was overwhelming for me, especially growing up conservative, growing up in a Christian household. It was not my vibe at all back then. And so I decided, even though I've been thinking that I'm going to go to Duke for the past 5 years, I'm not going to go to Duke. I'm not going to attend there. I decided to go to Pepperdine, which was right around the corner for me, a Christian school. It was just more fitting for me during that season. And so that Duke trip ended up proving very important for me in the upcoming course of my life. Now I want to share some story times with you about March Madness when I was in college. So even though I didn't end up going to Duke and I didn't end up going to a basketball school, Pepperdine had its basketball team, the Waves, but we were never really successful during my tenure there. And so I always still kept my eye out on March Madness. And something that you should know about me is that I just love athletes. I love athletic men. And so I'm not ashamed to say that I do have a type. Every person that I've ever dated and been in relationships with has been an athlete. Probably something Freudian, right? Because my dad played basketball. But I always have loved athletes, and I always had a goal from high school that I was gonna marry an NBA player. So I thought that was gonna happen by going to Duke. But when I decided not to go to Duke, I was kind of on the lookout on TV, like, is there any players that I could potentially try to go almost track down and, to be honest, like go to their school and fall in love with them and get married. That shows kind of my fairy tale mentality as a late teens and early 20s as well. I'm just being honest with you guys. That's really the way that I thought. So when I was in college at Pepperdine, there was two players who particularly caught my eye in the NCAA tournament. Okay, so the first one was Steph Curry. So I'm going to show you a picture just so that you can see, like, I'm not crazy. He actually was very cute, very, you know, adorable, and there was a reason for the obsessiveness. Now, this is all respect to the fact that, you know, Steph is a married man. His wife, Ayesha Curry, she's an amazing chef, businesswoman, mom. And so much respect to her as well. And much respect to my future husband, who I believe that God has on the way for me. But I think that it's just a funny story for you guys to know about me. So during 2007 to 2008, I was in college at Pepperdine. And during March Madness, March and April 2008 is when Curry had a Cinderella run to the Elite Eight. So what a Cinderella run is in NCAA tournament speak is when a team who's ranked lower ends up beating higher ranked teams to advance in the tournament. Okay, so of those 64 teams in the tournament, they're each ranked 1 through 16 for their region. So you have 4 sets of teams that are ranked 1 through 16. And the 1 seed plays the 16 seed, the 2 seed plays the 15 seed, and so on and so forth. So when a lower ranked seed beats a higher seed, let's say a 16 seed beats a 1 seed, that 16 seed is a Cinderella. They are, you know, an underdog who is becoming the princess of the ball. And when that kind of Cinderella runs happens, it's also called a bracket buster. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about brackets later on in the episode. So Steph Curry was the leader of a bracket buster team, a Cinderella team that made a deep run into the tournament. The first couple rounds of the tournament don't really have a name, but once you get to the top 16 teams overall, 16 of 68, they start to have names. So the top 16 teams are called the Sweet 16. The top 8 teams are called the Elite 8. The top 4 teams are called the Final 4. And then there's the championship. So Steph's team, Davidson College, ended up making it to the Elite 8, which is way deep into the tournament. And they lost to Kansas, who was a powerhouse team that's known for going deep into the tournament. They beat them in a nail bite. Kansas beat them in a nail biter, 59-57. So as I watched Steph go through the tournament and go on the Cinderella run, I was immediately smitten. I was like, I'm gonna go to Davidson. I'm gonna transfer there. We're gonna meet, and then we're gonna end up falling in love, and I'm gonna be an NBA wife. Steph ended up being a 2-time MVP of the NBA, so an amazing legacy, Hall of Fame player, perennial all-star, multiple-time champion. And a really hilarious thing is that one of my good friends, Ayana, is from the Bay Area. So Steph ended up playing for the Golden State Warriors in the NBA. So she knows a lot about Steph and a lot about his family, etc. Turns out in our 20s, she mentioned to me, you know, you kind of in some ways favor Ayesha Curry, who is Steph Curry's wife, which is, but I still don't think I would have had a chance even if I went, because they had locked in like high school. And so it's just a funny anecdote and a weird twist of fate that allegedly I resemble his wife in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so another really funny random thing is that Davidson is in North Carolina. Duke is in North Carolina. And this next school I'm going to talk about is also in North Carolina. So I don't know if that's like the universe telling me that I need to make my way to North Carolina at some point, if it's just a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences, so I don't know, but duly noted. Okay, so let me give you another story about March Madness and my fantasies of being a NBA wife. So in 2009, the next year, there was another player that caught my eye in the NCAA tournament. Again, I'll show you a picture so that you can see I'm not crazy. Like this is a handsome man. Okay. Now this is Jeff Teague. He is a former NBA player as well. He played in the NBA for like over a decade. He now is one of the hosts of my hands down favorite sports podcast, which is the Club 520 podcast. Jeff, DJ, and B Hen host the podcast. It is hilarious. It is an amazing podcast. And again, respect to Jeff's wife. He's married. Like, I respect marriages. This is just a story for purposes of the fact that it's hilarious. Okay. So, when Jeff appeared on my screen for Wake Forest, I was like, oh, this man is handsome. Okay. Challenge unlocked. I might need to go to Wake Forest, which was in North Carolina as well. So what happened in that tournament run is that the squad, the Wake Forest squad, was a 5 seed, and they lost to a 13 seed, Cleveland State. So Cleveland State in that situation was the Cinderella, and Wake Forest was the Goliath that got slayed. And Jeff ended up leaving Wake Forest to go to the NBA, so there was no reason for me to transfer to Wake Forest. The fact that I even considered it is wild. I was a wild girl. I always had a vivid imagination. So let me explain to you a little bit about these brackets, because the 5 and 13 seed is kind of like a seminal, like pivotal matchup situation. So when you have your NCAA tournament, they come out with something that's called a bracket. So it looks like kind of a grid, and a lot of people do pools where they will bet money, or, you know, sometimes it's not for any money, it's just for fun, for bragging rights. And they will fill out who they think is going to win each of the matchups throughout the tournament, all the way up to the championship. So bracketology is kind of the science and art of filling out those NCAA tournament brackets. And there's some people who that's like their main hobby, is like figuring out what the brackets are going to be, figuring out who they think is going to win, all that kind of stuff. With the 13 seed and the 5 seed, like a Cleveland State and Wake Forest matchup, that's known for being a common upset. So a lot of times people will pick that upset, saying like, even though that lower seed is a Cinderella team, I think they're going to win the game, because that often happens. So that's just a little bit of background for you on NCAA tournament jargon. Oh, also bracket busters. Okay, so a bracket buster is somebody like Davidson, Steph Curry's team, where you have a team who is lower ranked and they beat a higher ranked team, and it messes up your whole bracket. Let's say you had Duke to win and they were the number 1 seed, but the number 16 seed beat them in the first round. Well, your bracket is busted. There's no way for you to win, because now the team that you deemed was going to be the winner is out. So that's what a bracket buster means. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about my experience with the NCAA tournament and my lore, I wanted to share with you guys my predictions, and we'll see at the, mid-April, we'll know if these teams actually won. And I'm just going to start with the Final Four because I don't think you guys want me to go through all of those different matchups. Okay, so my Final Four picks are Michigan State, University of Florida, Duke, and Houston. I had to throw Duke in there. That's, my nostalgia. I believe that the championship will be between University of Florida and Duke, and I think that Duke will win the championship. Duke is led this year by 18-year-old Cooper Flagg, and he's expected to be the #1 NBA draft pick when he decides to leave for the NBA. A lot of people think he's going to be a one and done and leave this year, but because of the money that's available to athletes in college now, due to the name, image, and likeness laws with the NCAA, it's possible that he could choose to stay another year and refine his game and make money through NIL deals. So we'll see what happens. I'm super happy that I got to share with y'all my March Madness stories and my March Madness history. Enjoy the tournament, and I will talk to you guys next week.